this article is really just highlighting my dad's story, his experience with having a heart attack and having to get a quadruple bypass surgery afterwards. Uh, it's really about how he felt afterwards, and the focus of care that he received was largely about medication, physical needs, um, and he just felt a little bit lost in a, a big missing piece, which was the psychological, social factors that he was really coming to surface for him after his heart attack. Um, so I guess in this story, I talk about his experience and how he felt kind of like alone, and how there wasn't a lot of social support offered or encouraged, I guess, like peer support groups that were encouraged, right? Like,
I did ask about it, and they said it's a funding issue. They just don't have money for stuff like that.
yeah.
And I think in the same way, when you went in for rehab, I mean, you were kind of ushered in, ushered out, and everything was on the clock. 5 minutes on the treadmill, 5 minutes for this, 5 minutes discussion of diet, that kind of thing, and then adios amigo till next week, and you have 3 weeks left by that kind of thing. So it was seemed very copy and paste for people who had. I mean, we'd all gone through something catastrophic, and yet we didn't really have any way to share it, which just seemed really dissonant somehow. And it wasn't their fault. Um, I was telling Rima that the most significant support that happened to me when I was getting the rehab was one volunteer lady who told me that she prays for every single one of the men every single night by name. And that may seem really neither here nor there to anybody else hearing it, but if you're one of the guys, that's a biggie.
Yeah, and so um, the I guess point of the article is how can we kind of fill in this gap? And um, so I studied occupational therapy in school, and I feel that the occupational therapy lens is super helpful in addressing that recovery process, right? Like occupational therapists, they kind of have this holistic model of care where they consider the person and maybe, the physical challenges, but also their environments, which might be, at home, but also their social environments, and then the things that they do in their daily lives, which could just be functional, but could also be things that are leisure and things that you enjoy doing, or just those little things that contribute to meaning and purpose in your life. So I feel like OTs have a great strength here in maybe leadership roles for rehab programs, and just advocating for more funding, like my dad said.
Yeah, and to be honest, it may not even be an issue of funding when you're dealing with the people. It's an issue of I guess caring and being open to the bigger picture. Just for example, social spiritual things are almost like forbidden to talk about in our system because God forbid you offend anybody. Uh, and so we skirt by. I mean, we whistle past the graveyard. Um, I remember when I was, in that weird fog when you're coming out of your operation, there was, code blue, code blue, code blue all the time. And finally, when a doctor came by, I said, are you guys like yanking people in off the street, or like what's going on? What's with all this, code blue, code blue? Like, and he said, sir, not everybody is as fortunate as you are. Your operation was a success. You're healing well. There's people who are older. They're not as healthy, and that their operation maybe didn't go well, and maybe you should count your lucky stars. It never occurred to me because in some kind of weird way, especially as a man, you're on autopilot. Everything you do, push, 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 work, 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 and you just kind of assume you'll be okay, but you are actually kind of disembodied from your body. It is funny because I said to Rima, you know, we're in this season of the incarnation where it became flesh. And the funny thing with people who have been in a heart attack is you are realizing that you have become disconnected with your own body. And especially like my wife and myself are at the YMCA these days, and you go there and in this quiet, weird way when you're working out, you're thinking to yourself, this is my body, this is my arms, these are my legs. You've never really thought about it in that way before. I like to kind of, well, I don't, not that I like to, but let's just say that I always kind of think of things now automatically as the first time I died and the next time I die. So the first time I died, I didn't die. But let's just say that the timeline got suddenly put on the map because you realize that next time there is going to be a next time and you will die. And I think what happens for anybody is suddenly there's, if you're a human being and you've reached the age of 50 or 60 and you don't have some things that you have messed up or done wrong, relationships, mistakes you made in life, things where you didn't reach the mark, if you don't have a collection of those, you're not a human being. And suddenly you may have had that on the back burner. It is not a back burner item any longer because you suddenly realize, you know, I can't die like this. And so you understand very clearly that the next time I die, I have to be able to die. I can't go like this. So you have this laundry list of stuff that you got to take care of. It's a bit of asking people for forgiveness. It's understanding things that you have not done correctly, and a part of it is a little bit of letting go. You know, it's you are limited. Your time is limited, and that's okay. So there will be a point when all of this is done, and that's okay. If you're okay with it, it's okay, and that's the point: is you have to be okay with it. So that interior stuff gets very front burner after that, and there's no one to really navigate that with you. And the funny thing is that I think men can come on this very easily by their own. I had a very funny Uber ride this morning on the way from the car dealership. A guy who was 80, and he told me that I asked him how he came to drive an Uber, and he said his wife passed on 2 years earlier from Alzheimer, and he was struggling, and his kids said, "Dad, you need to see some people." So he started driving an Uber. So we ended up having a 15-minute discussion where he actually pulled over. And at one point he started crying. I mean, in a good way. It's weird because, you know, guys don't cry in front of other guys. And at the end, he shook my hand and he said, "Sir, can I tell you that this was a blessing, and this was the best conversation I had all day." And the thing is that the meeting point was that both of us had stuff that had happened and we had to figure it out. And you know, how nice it was to talk to somebody else that had something to figure it out, and we both were figuring it out. It was it's healthcare 101 that doesn't have a huge, you know, technical bill on it. It's totally untechnical, and it's organic, and it can happen in an Uber on the way home from the car place.
So I think the years leading up to my dad's heart attack, it was COVID, right? So he was under a lot of stress with work, and I think a lot of people can relate to this during COVID, where you just kind of stop doing all the things that you enjoy. And I think then that could have, you know, contributed to those risk factors. But afterwards, he kind of, you know, my dad's a pretty reflective guy. He really was considering, like, what does this mean for me now? How can I collect myself and move forward in a positive way? And some of the things that he started to get back into was painting, and one of yeah, he brought one of his icons. So he's painted some icons, and these are pretty meaningful for him because it brings.
They're a woodworking project too. There are batons that have to go in with a dovetail wedge. It's a particular kind of wood. Everything has a meaning. So the colors, the materials, everything has a theological meaning in an icon. And they have a specific name in Russian. You have to have this recess within the picture sits within. It's considered a holy space, like an ark that, you know, contains holy objects, and you are not really supposed to touch it. But all of these things are important aspects of making an icon or an authentic icon. And it's such an ancient and well-traveled craft, and it's beautiful. And to take part in it as a woodworker and as a painter and as a contemplation is wonderful. The first one that I did when I was recovering was, if you're familiar with icons, Pantocrator. The Pantocrator, it's the Byzantine icon of, you know, Christ the teacher. And let's just say that if you almost met the man up close and personal before you're ready, it's a contemplation. So.
Mhm. So yeah, I mean, painting and making icons kind of encompassed all of his talents in one. um, but it's something that he's really been able to, I don't know, I mean, and even his woodworking classes, he started teaching woodworking as a way to socialize, but also engage in something that's meaningful to him and share that with other people.
Yeah, my wife sees these things more from a utility standpoint, and she said to me, "You put way too much into your classes." And I said, "Not at all. The fact is, I really loved all my students. I love them, and I got that back. I had some very good feedback, and that was bigger than the money." You know, I helped some people on their discovery of something that is outside of this whole big technological life. I remember one guy in the class was, you know, they come into that class and they're all these huge machines. And just on the side, he was trying to make a little stand for his iPhone. And we are at an enormous disconnect in our culture for how to do anything practical. And he was going at these big machines, and I just handed him a chisel and said, you know, you can do this with a chisel. And I showed him how to work with your hands with a chisel. And for him, it was like rocket fuel. This guy was like, he was so psyched because he'd learned how to make a square hole perfectly with a chisel. It's something you never contemplated doing before. And the thing is that to do anything physical is also very spiritual. Like I said, we are spirit made flesh, and we're in the season of living that out. You know, so it's a wonderful thing when it all gets working together.
Yeah. So you really got back into doing some things that were more meaningful for you, and you know, my dad, he was able to come to that on his own, but some people might not be able to do that, right? So sorry.
The thing is with this kind of thing is that it's partially organic, but you have to want to. And sometimes I think some people you may need some prompts or some practical connections to get you to that place. And that's why, you know, I mean, like I said, we're in the why. The thing that is most funny is that I think what thing I like the most is the 5-minute conversations that that you have 25 5-minute conversations when you're there for your workout. And if you have been in COVID isolated, this is life-giving. It's wonderful. And the thing is, we had just had, or I heard by the grapevine that the people at work had a get together, and I found out by accident, and they said nobody picked up the phone, and they said, well, you're not there anymore. That kind of says everything about what the emphasis you can put on your career. I remember before having my heart attack, I was juggling the political and practical aspects of all the changing technological systems that go into doing graphic design. They're changing all the time. The people are changing. So who you're working with, who you're depending on, doing it by distance is even more complicated. And then I had a contract doing packaging for tools for home hardware. And I remember, the matchup for this was out of China. And so it involved some very weird hours working around the clock. And I remember saying to my wife, my heart hurts. But the thing is that I didn't mean only just physically, but I was feeling it then. Like my heart hurts, but it was all that stress building, 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 building. And I think, to be honest, one of the best things about having a heart attack, if you can say that, is that you actually have permission to get off the merry-go-round, because you don't you go until you hit the wall. When you hit the wall, you finally say, oh, I hit the wall. I guess I have an excuse to get off the merry-go-round now. And you can look at some new things or look at life in some new ways. I think the road forward is pretty good. I don't know if I would have said that a while ago, but I think you have to go through it to go out of it. So again, maybe that's a learning that other people may be happy to know, because I think I've heard from other people that you go into this nosedive afterwards. That's that whole area that nobody can or is willing to touch because we just don't talk about that stuff. And I mean, who's more willing to talk about it than people who have gone through it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the moral of the story is like recovery isn't just about overcoming the physical, problems, but it might be also like redefining yourself and what your purpose might be, the things that you can leave behind, your legacy, the and we need people to support us to get to that too, right? I think you're a very lucky one where you've come to you're a hobbies guy, so you've got hobbies in your back pocket, and you've been able to reconnect with people who you lost touch with, and meeting people at the YMCA now and woodworking. But some people don't get that, and I think that's where OTs can help support and facilitate. We can always say advocate for funding and, consider those leadership roles where you might have a little more say in the program development. But, that seems maybe a little bit farther to reach than, like my dad said, if, there's so many times where you're with your client and maybe there's a time crunch, you have to get to the next one. And you can tell if someone has something to say or they need a listening ear, right? You can tell if someone wants to talk about something or they need just a little more patience. So I guess I would encourage OTs to actively listen, and in those moments where you can tell where someone might just need someone to talk to, or even just some reassurance to not shy away from that because of time restraints, or because it might even only take a minute or two, right? Just to hear someone out, or to even give a hand on the shoulder, you know, to let someone know that you're there and you can hear them.